for me. Run through the land, you run through my soul. Bring me wisdom and peace. Run through all ages and all of life's stages. You bring me around to find my release.
Hi, this is Jan Lewis. Welcome to be my guest today. We have Canney. Did I say that right?
Yes,
Canney. She's a genealogist from Millbury. And where did I read about you, Kelly? Do you remember?
I think either at the Millbury Library. I have some flyers. I've had them up at the cake shop in Millbury and a couple other places.
Now, were you originally from this area?
No, actually, my family is just outside Syracuse, New York.
All my cousins, long ago when I was growing up, lived in Syracuse. I grew up in the western part of the state, and I remember we would take turns in Christmas. They would either come out or we'd take the long trip up to New York to Syracuse.
Yes.
It seemed long to me as a kid, but is it really that long?
I would say it probably takes us about a little less than 4 hours from my house to my parents' house. Yeah, They're just east of Syracuse.
I can see why I hated it as a child. I was not a good long.
And back then the roads weren't the speed limit was lower too, so it would take even longer.
It was okay. How long have you been doing this, Kelly, genealogy?
So as a hobby, I've been doing it since probably 2002. So coming close to
17 years.
Yep, close to. It might even be longer than that if you count my time with my grandfather. So a long time, and then about 9 months ago, I decided to cement my career change. I'm actually a physical therapist.
Where do you work?
I actually haven't been working for several years for various reasons. And I have 4 children, so they're a big part of the reason.
How old are they?
They range in age from freshman in high school to 6.
Oh my God!
So the little one going to school kind of facilitated the change for me.
What did you do before this?
I've worked with kids in early intervention. I've worked in short-term rehab facilities. I've worked in a couple other different settings. And then about 2 or 3 years ago, I just... It's kind of a high burnout field. Yes. Insurance has changed a lot of things in the last 10 years especially. And I was just able to take a break from that, and I started subbing at my daughter's school.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking, do I want to switch where I was doing physical therapy, or do I want to go a totally different direction? And I played with that idea for several years. And then every time I went to think about spending money on continuing education for PT, I just kept coming back to the genealogy.
And you love it. Now, you mentioned your grandfather.
Yes.
My grandfather was instrumental. I think we used to talk about our family heritage. Did that get you going?
Absolutely.
Where did your family hail from?
So my family, actually, now with my brother and sister's children in my hometown, are 8 generations of my family in the town. It's the village of Chenango.
Irish?
No, that side of the family is English. So we believe, I say that because we have one little spot that I'm not 100% sure, but most likely came over in 1628 and landed in Salem from England, and then did the typical migration through Massachusetts into Rhode Island over to Connecticut, and then around the Revolutionary War ended up in the Mohawk Valley in New York.
So the Syracuse area where you were?
Yes. So eventually, around 1800 to 1810, my great 4 times grandfather, Chauncey Button, left. It was called Canney. It's outside of Albany. Left there and ended up in Chenango, or the town of Sullivan, which is in Madison County, New York.
So the interest you got with your own family spurred, did you have to learn about genealogy and how to do it?
So I did it very backwards.
Yeah.
I started as a complete novice and didn't investigate the proper way to do things until after I had been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
So I basically learned the hard way.
Is there a proper way? I mean, I just grab everything I can.
Yep. Well, so when I started, especially because that family, my Button line, and then my father has a line that leads back to a name of Stanton, which was also Old English and here very early. there's a lot of information out there about those families. And some of it is accurate, and some of it's inaccurate. And as I built my tree on Ancestry, I was on Ancestry as soon as it was invented and out there. And I would just take a record or a family tree suggestion, and that looks right. Click, put it in.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you end up creating a tree with a lot of errors, most likely.
Really?
There are certain records that don't have a lot of value to them because they're an index of an index of an index. So you don't know, like one of my ancestors is John Murphy.
Yeah.
The son of John Murphy, the son of John Murphy.
It
How
was
many
popular.
John Murphys might I be able to find in the Philadelphia area in the 1870s? A lot. So you can't just pull one record
I know.
and say, this is definitely it, and throw it in. So as I've gotten, I've been around longer, I have found some of these errors. When the more time goes on, the more records are available. So as new stuff comes on, I find stuff that, this isn't right. This is listing all these other people in the house.
Yeah.
And those names don't match.
Yeah.
Or they add a date to whatever that record was, and the date doesn't match.
Yeah, I've seen that. We have a conundrum in my family. My great-great-grandfather, Benjamin Jocelyn, who was the founder of the Jocelyn.
I did a little digging.
I can't find where this man is buried. He was born in Putney, Vermont.
Yeah.
He lived in Worcester. He founded the Jocelyn Arms, the rifle in Stonington. His wife, I'm not moving, so she stayed in Worcester. I don't know what happened. I know where my great-grandmother, his daughter-in-law, and his son, Junior, Ben Jr., they're right in Hope Cemetery.
Right.
No problem. I can't find the inventor and his wife. It's like, poof.
Yep.
But I've got most everybody else in my family. What the heck?
So I actually went on to just for giggles, I went on and looked it up. And I found Benjamin Jr. in Hope Cemetery.
Yeah.
I did not have any luck with what I could find.
Yeah.
I would have, first step, try to find the actual, and I found death records for Benjamin. F. Junior.
Yeah.
Junior.
Yeah.
But didn't see the record for Senior. And I checked the Putney for cemeteries there. Didn't see.
I did too.
that
Nobody.
either.
Poof.
It's really hard. A lot of the states, it varies state to state, when they started to require that deaths be recorded by the government. So I don't remember the exact date for Massachusetts, but you could try requesting that. That would be a good next step.
I talked with somebody up there who's very nice at Putney, and he did what he could.
Yeah.
The story from what I heard growing up was that after the Civil War, he shut down, Jocelyn Arms, and then he went to New York. New York City's a big place. First of all, I don't know if that's correct, because God help me, I tried to connect with the Manhattan Records Department.
Yeah.
They're like, who are you? But, there's so many people in New York. Oh my God. So, I don't know, but I grew up in a family where the grave sites is sacred.
Yeah.
And I know pretty much where everybody is.
Exactly.
But I'd love to be able to take my son to see where his great-great-great-grandfather, the inventor, is.
Right.
I mean, where he's buried.
Yeah, I think the next, if you can, did you check with the city of Worcester?
Yes,
the death
right
record?
at the library.
Not for the burial, but for the death record.
Yeah, I checked that
Okay.
too. He didn't die in, he's not buried in Worcester.
Okay.
I don't think so. I mean, his wife, Harriet, Elvira, I don't.
Harriet Elmira.
Anyway, back to now. If somebody's interested in, God help us,
Yes.
don't try to do it alone. In genealogy, how would they get a hold of you?
So I have a website,
Yeah.
which is CanneyGenealogicalServices.org. And you can email me, which is Kelly at CanneyGenealogicalServices.org.
Canney.
Yes, Canney.
That sounds Irish. Is it Irish?
It is. My husband is very Irish.
Very.
Yes.
Now, let's say they say, okay, we're having trouble. We need a real genealogist.
Yep.
They call you or email you, whatever.
Yep.
What's the next step for them? What do you do?
So I like to do a consultation first, because somebody might say, like my case, I'm trying to find out where my John Murphy came from. And he's the son of John Murphy, the son of John. That would be something very difficult. And I want to be upfront and honest with somebody that, Typically, we get paid by the hour. Sometimes, like, I will do a package where you get a certain amount of hours, and then I make you a nice presentation. But in that situation where you've already done most of your tree and you have this really difficult brick wall that leads back to probably Ireland, I'm going to be very honest and say it will take a lot of hours and potentially not
come up with something.
Right.
Do people come in with high hopes? I would probably be one of them. And then you have to say, look. You're like,
I might say in certain instances, I've had people that had family trees that lead back to Poland.
Yeah.
Pre-World War I and pre-World War II. There's not a lot of records available, and even when records are available, they're in Polish. Or
they're what?
In Polish.
Okay.
Or other languages. And I would be very honest, the one client that I had, I worked her family tree back to Poland. I did a little bit of research on the name because sometimes you can find out information that will lead you to a quick... but as soon as I hit a wall where I'm not finding information quickly, that's a point where I call and I say...
Well, it's easier.
So I've reached the end
Yeah.
of this path, and it's kind of a fluid thing for me.
Yeah, just keeps going.
Yes.
I probably should maybe start concentrating more on my Lewis side. My mother's is in the background here, but the Lewis, because I know it's Scottish. I know. And the Isle of Lewis in Scotland, I know that my grandfather Lewis, his father Fletcher, there's a nice Scottish name for you, they came to Nova Scotia. Now, whether they lived from Wales, Welsh, or they lived from Scotland, they landed in New Scotland, Nova Scotia.
Okay.
Then they moved to Chelmsford. They might be easier to track.
I have found so far, there's always exceptions, of course. There is a website called findmypast.com. It is a British-based website, so there's so many records from Great Britain, from Scotland, from Ireland.
Findmypast.com?
Findmypast.com. It is a little on the pricey side.
Yeah. Like how much? What are we talking here?
So I believe the current rate for a year's subscription for the full database is about $180.
Okay, well, so in other words,
But they also you can join monthly. You can actually buy credits, and each record that you find costs a certain number of credits. But I've never done it, and so I don't know exactly. I don't know if it's one record, one credit, or.
So they access you, and you do the footwork, though.
Correct. Yes, that's you doing the research.
Okay, so somebody comes to you, they've made an appointment, they have a consult, and you make an agreement.
Yep.
And you give them a time or limit, or you say, well, you're going to just have to wait to see how it goes with you?
Typically what I do, it's hard to use somebody else's tree and not check it.
Yeah.
So usually I get as much information as I can get from my client. I will typically start with telling them to get as much information as they can from whatever oldest relative they have to try to get what they can, find. Because often what you can find from home is even better than what you can find from some of the records. And then end up, I usually keep checking in.
Yeah.
Typically when I start, if I'm starting a tree from, let's say, a generation born 1920, and I'm working back.
That would be my father.
Right.
Yep.
And especially if we're working back several generations in the U.S., I can find a lot of information very, very quickly. 5 hours, everything's different, but more than likely I'd be finding 3 or 4 generations. Usually you can get back, depending on what state you go back to. Back to 1850, you can find all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Back before 1850, it gets a little more challenging because government records were not always kept. You find the records in the church records. Yeah. And the census is different before 1850 because they don't list everybody in the house. And then it depends. Massachusetts has wonderful records. I was able to go back and find the will of my 10th great-grandfather, the one that came over from England.
What year? In the 1600s?
Yes.
I didn't think that was possible.
Yes. Yep. So Massachusetts records are amazing. New York State, on the other hand, is horrendous.
Yeah, I dealt with them on the
Yes.
phone, and they just like, it's basically like, go away. You know, they really were really interesting.
Well, they had a fire in the early 1900s that destroyed
Their records.
so many records.
Yeah, I felt like I was sort of like drowning in deep water or something.
Yes.
I have a question. What about in families where the names became more, I hate to say it, anglicized?
Yes.
My mother's side was, well, it was anglicized to Hurl, Hirtle, German. Okay, it's German. But that she thinks it was von Hartling. Hirti or Her? It's tough. That's, and then also, her mother's maiden name was Depew, which is French. Depew.
Yeah.
No, it was made from Depew to Dubois.
Oh,
It's mind-boggling to me.
That is often a big hurdle.
Why
and
did
especially a big hurdle in proving.
Yeah.
Like you can find paths that say this has to be it. I'm certain it's it, but you just don't have that extra amount of proof.
Yeah.
One thing that is nice when using Ancestry.com is they have a sound, I think they used to call it SoundX. I don't know if they still call it that or not. But they will take any name that remotely sounds similar. So one of my names in my tree is Keville. It's Keville. Irish, but sort of French Huguenot probably. But his name, when I first started, I couldn't find him in the 1860 census anywhere.
Yeah.
And after they started adding that kind of software or search ability, it was under Kibble. The census enumerator had written it as Kibble.
Interesting.
But it came up in my search later on when that SoundX started.
Well, Depew.
But Depew does not sound like Dubois.
No,
So
no, it wasn't Dubois. I was wrong.
Okay.
It was from Depuis, Depuis.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So they anglicized it to Depew. That's all on my mother's side. It was everybody kept their own name on my father's.
Yep.
But which makes me wonder, where did they land? They were, I think, French Huguenots. There was a minister on her side when Long Island, New York, used to be, or what's that? No, what do you call it? There's a part of New York that's really bad. Can't think of the name of it. Back then, it was really nice. It's not. I can't think of it, but that's where I think they were. French Huguenots in New York.
Okay.
Would that be Harlem?
Huh?
Harlem?
Harlem.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul. Harlem. We all think of Harlem now as,
Yeah.
oh my God. Back then, it was quite nice.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, did they come into New York on the boat? Where the heck did they land?
Well, and that's another difficulty if your family came into the country prior to Castle Island and Ellis Island, which, before, I think it's 1888 maybe started Castle Island. It gets very challenging to find those records. I have found a few in my tree, and then there's others I can't find anywhere.
How can they reach you again?
The website is cannygenealogicalservices.org, and my email is kelly@canneygenealogicalservices.org, and it's Canney.
A lot of people, this is a big thing now. Really curious. What is your opinion on the swab thing? And a lot of people are afraid of
DNA.
getting their information out there.
Yes, and there are a lot of things to consider about whether or not you want to do DNA. There's the privacy issues that a lot of people are very concerned about. And also just you may very well uncover things that might change the way your family thinks about your family.
Their ancestry, you mean?
No, about, finding a half-sibling somewhere that you didn't know existed.
Well, I know I've only got one. I know I've only got one.
There's a lot of things people don't think about that, and it might not be in your immediate family. It could be, I have a cousin issue that we found, not in my generation, but a couple generations back where there was some extra cousins that we didn't know about, which, in our family, in our instance, it was a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And, their family was reunited and wanted to be, but it's not always the case.
So your grandpa, how old were you when you started to listen to Grandpa?
I've always loved to listen to him. He was very passionate about history. He collected lots and lots of ephemera, which is paper memorabilia, letters, books. He had a collection of, I think it's like 200 letters between a soldier and a family during the Civil War. He was just amazing.
Where was he from?
He was from the little town in Madison County, New York.
Yeah.
Yep. And he lived till he was 87, and I was 21 when he passed away, so I spent a lot of time with him.
It's interesting, sometimes on one side of the family, like we've got living into their mid-late 90s on my father's side, and my mother's side, 80-something, but today that's considered young. If you look at the obituaries, 100, 90-something, so it's a whole different world.
It is.
So than it was in the Civil War when Ben Jonson invented the rifle. It's like, what happened to this guy? I mean, he existed, obvious. But when the war was over, the government no longer bought the rifles.
Right.
Okay, so what did he do? I mean, that means the business folded.
I remember I just went recently this week to the Worcester Public Library, the main campus, and was looking through the Worcester city directories. And I found him with gaps. Some of the years his name was in there, and then there'd be a gap of a couple years where he was not.
Ben Sr.?
Ben Sr.
And the wife was Elmira?
Harriet.
Harriet.
Yep.
Yeah. Where did she go?
And she's on there by herself a couple times without him. It was very interesting.
She refused to move. There's a reason why I don't have the whole story, because in my family we knew a lot. There's a reason that they've left this out, and I'm thinking, did he really maybe go to New York? They don't have any record down there? I'm not sure.
Anything near New York City, it's very difficult, especially prior to 1900, to find it. I think there were so many people that were just undocumented that lived there.
We're going to go to the Springfield Museum because the Armory, because they have some of his. I'm not a gun enthusiast, but his rifles for the Civil War are on display there. At least I can show my son that.
Yeah.
I mean, he did exist.
Yep.
What do you do when somebody calls you and says, "Look, I don't have a whole lot of info for you to start with. Can you start pretty easily?"
If we can get back into the records that are available easily, which is prior to 1940.
Yeah.
So if somebody was starting that was my age and looking up their father's generation, that's very difficult because a lot of that information is protected.
Yeah.
But if you can get back to past the 1940s, it's you can find stuff.
How would I go about? Let's just say the Fletcher Lewis brought his family. It's either from Scotland and Nova Scotia, or I would say Wales. Mm-hmm. But do I have to contact Scotland, or do I have to contact England for this? What boat they were on, or what?
So you would probably, if you haven't been on Ancestry at all, you'd be shocked at what's available. Right, just in that one site. It is fairly expensive.
Yeah,
it can be, $300, $400 a year for the full subscription.
Yeah.
But if you're serious about it, it's the easiest to use. It has the most records available. And I have found a lot of Nova Scotia records from Nova Scotia, from Canada, as well as Scotland. So for Scotland, I would end up switching to the Find My Past. Like follow the tree up to the switch over to Scotland, and then
I went to a Scottish festival one time, and there was a genealogy tent.
Yep. They're very serious about genealogy in Scotland.
I talked with her. Then I went to this little book sale there, and it calls Scottish Clans, Kith and Kin. Mm-hmm. And I looked up, Lewis is there. We're also part of, if you were part of the McLeod family out there, we're part of, there's a newscaster on one of the channels in Boston.
Yep.
Ken McLeod?
Yeah.
I feel like saying, hello. MACCLEOD.
Mm-hmm.
So the Lewises and the McLeods, which could have happened in a lot of families, were clans kind of together. Then they went separate.
Okay.
Harris is also Harris. A little different than what you see in the regular American. I think they're part of a whole thing. It's
the Scottish ancestry is really cool.
Yeah, I was watching a thing about Nessie. I wonder if he
Ness.
really exists. I'd love to think he does. We'll see.
Well, maybe you should visit.
I don't really know. We have been talking with Kelly Canney, and she's a genealogist. She's over in Millbury, and you can connect with her. Get a consultation. She's going to have a flyer. Let me hold it up for you.
There you go.
Go down to the downstairs at the Upton Library. Is there one up in Millbury Library too?
Yes. Yep.
And check it out, and it'll tell you about how you go about doing these. And you're going to be appearing at the Millbury Library,
yes,
right?
I'm teaching an introductory class, Intro to Genealogy in the Digital Age,
Okay.
basically for people who are just starting out, that maybe retired and want a new hobby, or actually I had quite a mix. I taught a similar class in March, and we had, I think it was almost 30 people, and quite a range of people. So
30, that is going to be great.
And then we've expanded it into 2 classes this time.
Okay.
October 3rd is the intro, where I talk about some of the different websites and resources, and the second class is about DNA testing. So
I know. I'd love
there wasn't
to do
enough
that.
time. That was originally part of the first one, but
I'd like to do that swap thing, but my husband says, what if the insurance situation, health insurance, becomes a real super duper...
It is a hot topic.
Yeah, and if they got a hold of... There's nothing wrong with you, but I mean, if they got a hold of your DNA and it was somebody who has a pre-existing type of thing, doesn't that kind of put them in a bad place? If they've used that, they can't...
I'll be in trouble, because I think my whole family has tested at this point. But, you know, we were able to solve a lot of brick walls or confirm things that we were not able to confirm with records. We were able to confirm with DNA, especially homeland places in Ireland for my Irish family. We had family lore, but no records to back it up.
Yeah.
And then when we did the DNA testing, it did.
Your kids are going to find you as a jewel of information.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Are you keeping all this in a folder, right?
Oh, yes.
I'm trying.
It is.
Mine is elusive.
It takes a lot of time.
They're an elusive bunch.
Yes.
Before especially on my mother's side, but from that Civil War time, it's like, where the heck did he go? They had to put him somewhere. He has to be somewhere. He's either in Worcester or New York or... And
then you have the families that, you know, had their own family burial ground that never really made it into the records, depending on where they were.
Well, I think up in that Putney,
That's
he was a nice guy.
up
He tried to give me everything he could, but
Yeah.
darned if we could find it.
No. And I think I found his parents up in Putney, too, so it
Yes.
would be weird in that instance for it to be a family burial
I
ground.
wonder if the wife, the one who refused to go to Stonington, Connecticut, if she got buried near him. I guess she was a pretty strong-minded lady.
Yeah. That's
She's, I'm not moving from Worcester. This is mine. Good for her. She didn't want to go. I don't know why he chose Stonington. Why didn't he go to Worcester? Why didn't he just stay there?
Yeah. Well,
who knows?
He had to reinvent himself.
I know Asa Waters in Millbury. That he was involved in during the
armory.
Civil War.
Yeah.
The fire. I bet you the two men connected
Oh, I'm sure they did. Yeah.
somehow. They both gave guns to the government.
Yeah.
Thank you for being with us.
Absolutely.
My God, she's a wealth
Thank you.
of information on genealogy, which fascinates me, and I think it's kind of in my family. I love it. I'm glad I listened to my grandfather as much as I could, and everybody else.
Absolutely.
And you did, thanks
Yes.
to your grandfather.
Absolutely.
So we're going to have you back on again because this is terrific. Right? There's so much more to talk about, really. So
Thank
if you
you.
again, one last time, how can they reach you?
The website is Canney, genealogicalservices.org. And my email is kelly@canneygenealogicalservices.org.
Go for it. She's terrific. She'll have a consultation with you. And is a consultation free, or is it a little fee? Or?
There's a small fee. It's $25, but then
that's
if you end up booking me for services, it just goes
It's
towards
by
your
the hour,
balance.
yeah.
Correct.
25, that's a pretty good thing. You got a question. That's an unbelievably great price. Really. And she's right over in Millbury.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you very
See
much.
you next time.
All
Bye-bye.
right.
Good girl.